start off with a little bit of a shocking story. I can't verify that it's true. Doesn't really matter though, it's a great story. The reason why I want to start with that story is because it's going to a little bit show us the Mizrach Tamarav in this subject. Yishuv Eretz Yisrael could either be a mitzvah, could either be the Rabbanon. If you take it the wrong way, according to some, it's minus and apikoros. It's good stuff. So, start with the story. Again, I can't verify that it's true, but it's an awesome story. As we know, the Chafetz Chaim, all his life, wanted to come to Eretz Yisrael. He was a big believer that Mashiach was coming. He made a kachim. He was a kohen himself. He had a kachim kola. He wanted to teach the kohanim of the generation shchita, kabbalah, zrika, all of the halachas, pidrol, and all the things which you need to know. Because when Mashiach comes, crash course won't. The next morning, you have to know how to make a korban tamid. So he was very big into that. Twice in his life, according to the stories, he tried to come to Eretz Yisrael. Once he only made it outside his village, and the other side he came to the outskirts of, I think, Poland, Ukraine. Not a very safe area right now, but that area, and I think he had to go back for whatever reasons. I think one time it was family matters, one time it was something with his yeshiva. He even got a passport picture done, which was a big deal for the Chafetz Chaim because he really did not like when people took pictures of him, etc. Now there was a Chacham, a Sephardi Chacham in Yerushalayim. This is a shocking story. I cannot verify it, but I heard it from different sources. The Chacham in Yerushalayim heard, the Sephardi Chacham in Yerushalayim heard that the Chafetz Chaim was on his way to Yerushalayim. This is in the 20s. Who was the Rav in Yerushalayim at the time? Rav Kook. Okay? You have to remember this. So, come in. So the Chafetz Chaim, so this Chacham, the Sephardi Chacham in Yerushalayim said, I'm not a Navi, I'm not a son of a Navi, but I'm predicting that the Chafetz Chaim will not make it to Eretz Yisrael, and for sure not to Yerushalayim. So they asked him, if you're not a Navi, how can you say such a thing? I'll tell you why. Okay? Because if the Chafetz Chaim comes to Yerushalayim, what do? You visit the Rav of the city. That's what you do. If you have a Rav of a city, and then the different Rav comes, you give respect, you go visit Rav Kook. What's going to happen with the Kitzonim who don't agree with Rav Kook? Even then already there was Kitzonim. What are they going to do? As soon as the Chafetz Chaim or Rabbi Kagan puts his footsteps on the footsteps of Weisz and Rav Kook, they're going to burn the Mishnah Berurah. And Hashem loves the Mishnah Berurah. That's why the Chafetz Chaim will not make it to Yerushalayim. Not Eretz Yisrael. Take the story as you will. If Hashem loves Mishnah Berurah, why can free will? There's a lot of things going on in this story. But we see from here extreme opinions when it comes to Eretz Yisrael. I was once at a meal here in Ramat Bet Shemesh. The other extreme. Actually a Haredi family, and they were fired. Everybody has to live in Eretz Yisrael. Not politically, that obviously is different, but they have to. And I had somebody else there who were a mutual friend, and they were driving him crazy. He lives at a good business in New York. You have to sell your business, you got to come back to Yisrael. I was quiet. Nobody asked my opinion. I wasn't married yet. I also know how to keep my mouth shut, but back then, for the most part, I kept quiet. They were driving him crazy. You got to sell your business, you got to come, you got to move. It's a mitzvah, it's a mitzvah, it's a mitzvah. At the end of my dessert already, I was plotting. I finally said the following. I can say that because my father did write a Sefer Torah, so I can say the following. Did you write a Sefer Torah? I asked the host of the meal. He said, no, it's $30,000. So what? Sell everything, remortgage your house, and write a Sefer Torah. It's a mitzvah seder raisa. The kisvu lechem as ashir hazos. Elamai, it is a mitzvah and that's mitzvahs. There comes priorities. Everything in life we have to have a little bit of a balance, right? Even we're going to see soon a little bit. The sukkah is very big. Even if it's a mitzvah seder raisa, or it's a darabanan, or it's apikoros, okay. Let's start. I wanted to start with that just to show that the halacha will turn into ashkafa, and then obviously into politics. That's why everything goes to. Fine. So it all starts from a pasuk in Pashas Maseh. It starts with Pashas Perik Lamed Gimel pasuk in Nun Beis. It says goes like the Vaydav. It starts with pasuk Nun. Vaydav Hashem and Moshe ba'arvos Moav al Yadin Yirecho Leima. Where was Arvos Moav? Arvos Moav was the last stop. Passport control, the last spot before you got into Eretz Yisrael. Arvos Moav is where Moshe Rabbeinu gave his whole drasha, 7 days drasha, where he spoke about basically the entire state of the Varmas and Arvos Moav. It was the last stop. They were getting their visas, they were getting the Nefesh B'Nefesh, everything with that, this is it. In a few days, when you go over. Moshe Rabbeinu died Zayin Adar. A month and 3 days later, because of Shloshim and 3 days preparation with the Aron and Yeshua, which obviously you learned, right? 10th of Nisan, we went into Eretz Yisrael. So this is a few days before, this is, let's say, I don't know, a couple months before. So when you go over, and you shall conquer. I think my English is okay, but I think Harashtem is to conquer, to take over. Is called Maskio Sam, it's called Sam, destroy the Avodah Zarahs, it's called Bamosam Tashmidu. The Harashtem es Eretz, and you shall conquer and settle the land. V'yoshaftem ba, and you shall live in it. Inherit it, thank you. V'yoshaftem ba, you should inherit it, thank you, you should inherit it, and you should settle in it. Yilachem Masati Sa'aret the rest of the it's yours. Should be like a political, Nudalit. V'yisnachaltem es Sa'aret, you should settle. Settlements. Begoro l'mishpachosecha. Okay? That's what Pasuk says. Now, Rashi, as we know, always learns Pasuk Pshat. Rashi is not going to bring me Kabbalah, it's not going to bring me Chassidus, it's not going to bring me. It's Pasuk Pshat. Look what Rashi says. V'harashtem is art. V'harashtem also says Rashi. V'harashtem also miyosheveha v'oz v'yishaftem v'atuchlu l'yischayim. Rashi seems to be saying that's how the Ramban learns Pshat and Rashi. This is Hashem is telling us a story. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to help you conquer the land with Yeshua, and then you will settle. It's not a mitzvah. Hashem is telling you, I'm taking you into the land, right? We're going to go in, and you're going to win the wars. Says the Ramban. The Ramban learns Pshat and Rashi that it's not a mitzvah. And the Ramban says, you learn Pshat, you have to say the truth. It's a mitzvah, the araisa, to live in Eretz Yisrael. Says the Ramban. I'm going to start with the end of the Ramban, because the end of the Ramban he talks about Rashi. The Rashi Pirish, he just quotes Rashi, he says Rashi seems to be saying it's only a Nevuah, but I hold differently. Umashi Pirash Nevuah Ikar. Al Dati Zu, says the Ramban, Mitzvahs Asehi, Itzava Osam Shiyashvu Ba'aret V'yirdi Osam. And he's quoted a few Gemarat, which we're going to in a moment. Mikan mitzavinu b'mitzvazu. This is the makar for what we're doing right now, living in Eretz Yisrael. This is the makar. One more time. V'harashtem v'sa'aret v'yashaftem. Unlike Rashi, who says it's a sipur devarim, telling us a story. No, it's a mitzvah. So what we're doing right now is the mitzvah. That's the famous riddle. What mitzvah do you do with your whole body? One of them is Eretz Yisrael. So if you're Rashi, not necessarily true. When it's Ramban, it definitely is true. In the Sefer HaMitzvot of the Ramban, he says it's stronger. He says like this.
The same quote, Rashi is no mitzvah of Yishuv is strong.
Correct.
At all?
Did you say the Ramban?
I'm sorry? It's a little bit louder, I don't hear what.
Did you say the Ramban?
Ramban, Nachmanides.
Yeah, because Ramban didn't.
We'll get to the Rambam in a moment. My Maimonides, we'll get to the moment.
What pasuk is that?
It's Parag Lamed Gimel in Bamidbar. The paragraph you want to read is pasuk Nun till Nun Dalet. The actual pasuk is Nun Gimel, 53. Yeah, that's right. What do you say?
So according to Rashi, there's no mitzvah of Yishuv is strong.
Give me a minute. Could be.
No, I thought that's what you said.
It does. The Ramban learns in Rashi. Right? I don't understand. Why don't you learn Pshat? This is the Makar. I'm going to just read the same mitzvah of the Ramban. He goes like this. The Ramban is very, very strong. He says, mitzvah revius. Shinstavinu l'reshes es ha'aretz asher nosan Hashem yisbarach yis'al al-Husseinu. We have a mitzvah to l'reshes is to inherit, not just to live here. But the earliest people in Aliyah, 20 and the 30s, they were mamish, they settled the land. If you see the old picture of Tel Aviv and Yafo, that's what it means, to settle the land. He brings a riot, which we'll go to in a moment. And then he says, Harin tzavinu bekibush. What's kibush mean? Conquer. B'chol hadaros. This is a Rishon. This is a Ramban. Okay? Fine. The problem is, with that, the Rambam. Now the fact that the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, or the Ramah don't bring it is not a kasha, nor is it a raya. I'll explain why. The Shulchan Aruch famously only wrote things which are nageya as we speak. Something which is more of a future mitzvah, he doesn't talk about korbanos, he doesn't talk about bikurim, he doesn't talk about that. You could say, well, I could still be Mekayim, but the Shulchan Aruch, we can get away with why he doesn't talk about it so much. He doesn't talk about Truma in Chutz La'aretz. I can understand a little bit, but the Rambam is shver. Because the Rambam brings every single possible halacha. The Rambam talks about Bikurim, talks about Hilchos Pigul, he talks about Hilchos Bechara, he talks about everything. The Yad HaChazaka. Why doesn't he mention it? That's the kasha. You don't say a word. He doesn't talk about mitzvah as what?
Doesn't talk about mitzvah.
No. Rambam famously does not. He talks about Bikurim. He talks about that the mitzvahs hatzluyas ba'aretz. He talks about various other things. He does not talk about actually living it. The mitzvah of actually living it. So it comes out if we would look at the Rambam, Maimonides, literally, comes out l'chayra machlokes v'shanim. Putting Rashi aside, because it could Rashi learn pasuk, fine. But the Sefer HaMitzvot people which actually wrote, Rashi is a pshat on the Bible, on the Torah. So you can say he didn't learn pshat and pasuk that way. It's not so smooth because the Ramban says this is the source. But okay, the Rashi is not a halacha sefer. It's a pshat in the Torah sefer. It's not. The Ramban is bothered by the fact that Rashi doesn't bring it. Okay, you can get away with it. Whereas somebody with your job is to count and to quote all of the mitzvahs, then you have to do a job to do. And if you miss one, then obviously you don't hold that as a mitzvah. The Ramban in Sefer HaMitzvot clearly says very strongly, B'chol hadoros, this is a mitzvah, one of the 613, whereas this is Nachmanides, and Maimonides doesn't talk about it. Right? One more time, this is important. From the fact that Rashi doesn't mention it, there's no raya so much what he holds if it's a mitzvah to the Raisa or not. But from the fact that the Rambam doesn't mention it, that's a big deal. You with me? Like if you open up a Shulchan Aruch, and the Shulchan Aruch doesn't talk about the mitzvah of standing up when the Sefer Torah comes in, which is a classic halacha in Beis HaKnesses, then obviously he doesn't hold of it. Right? But if you write a book and you don't mention that, that's not your job. You're writing a book about something else.
How can you explain that the Rambam risked his life coming?
The Rambam? Maimonides.
Yes.
Very good, yes. So there's more than that. The Ramban brings various proofs from the Gemara, which is of course before the Rishonim, that there is a mitzvah. Let me go through some of the proofs. As you know, husband and wife have responsibilities towards each other, and you sign a ksuba, etc., etc. What happens if one of the agreements of their marriage changed a couple of years later? For example, one of them wants to move to Eretz Yisrael, and the other person says, "No, I like it here in Miami. I like my beach house or my little hut in Switzerland. I like it. I don't want to live in Eretz Yisrael. What, I got to live in Ramapachem Yud Beis? I don't want to live there. I want to live. I'm comfortable. So it's a good shiloh." Says the Mishnah in Ksuvas. Rafim will get there in 3 weeks. Hakol mal Eretz Yisrael. Meaning, everybody has a right to force their spouse to come to Eretz Yisrael. But you can't force your spouse to leave. Let's say a husband and wife are living here, and then one of them says, "You know what, I got enough of this. I'm out of here." Got a problem. Echad hanoshim, vechad hanoshim. Nosake. Says the Gemara. Not only that, let's say you have an eved, a servant, who runs away from his master and runs into Eretz Yisrael. It's like you can't touch him. You can force his way out of the, because I'm living in Eretz Yisrael now. You live in in London, and you want to get me out of Eretz Yisrael to be an abbot for you in London. I'm not interested. I want to live in Eretz Yisrael. Comes out, you can use this. I don't want to say excuse. You can use this idea, this mitzvah, I'm going to call it now, to live in Eretz Yisrael, to get out of a monetary contract. It's a big deal. If you and I have a monetary contract and I change my mind, you sue me in court, in basing. It's a monetary contract. Husband and wife, master and eved. I'm not applying to husband and wife. I'm aware, right? Unless the husband is the eved, that I'm okay with saying, right? Either way, it's a monetary contract. You can't get out of a monetary contract just like that, unless Eretz Yisrael is a factor. That's one of the rayas of the Ramban. It's a strong raya. Okay? 1 second. Yeah. Let's say somebody has a opportunity. I'm not going to the Gemara. Gemara is a good thing. You have to write a contract about a certain, similar to an notarization that you own a piece of land in Eretz Yisrael. Says the Gemara, you're allowed to do it on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, you're allowed to write on Shabbos? It's a long time. Well, you mean you can ask a guy to finalize that contract on Shabbos. How can you ask a guy? Says the Rabban is a riot. Amir l'nochri b'mokam mitzvah is mutter. Okay, like I'm not going into that whole thing of Hilchos Shabbos now. But Amir l'nochri, I'm not allowed. Let's say I'm not allowed to tell a guy just like that for a favor on Yom Tov or on Shabbos. I'm not allowed to do that. However, if it's a strong mitzvah, you're allowed to. Okay, ask a local Orthodox rabbi when and how and when. But the Gemara clearly says if you have an opportunity. It's yours, not yours, not going into that, but you have an opportunity to own or to prove your ownership on a piece of land in Eretz Yisrael. You're allowed to write that document on Shabbos because maybe on Sunday the guy will run away or the opportunity will have gone. Okay, the Gemara says, don't write it yourself, ask a guy. But you can only ask a guy, says the Ramban, if it's a mitzvah. Must be the Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah. That's the second right. It's good, that's a very strong right. Again, I'm going over Hilchos Shabbos, like I will hearing aids. Right? Before Shabbos, if I forget to put in batteries, and I don't have them on Shabbos, first of all, I don't hear, it's not such a big problem, but I get tremendous headaches if I don't have them on. I got a special answer. If I forget to put it in, I may ask a guy. But you have to really get a answer. You can't ask a guy just like that. You can't ask a guy, could you back in my house, please? No, please don't. You can't do that. But for Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, you're allowed to. Says the Ramban, it's a riot, it's a mitzvah. The second riot. The first riot was that if a husband and wife, or an Evan and a master can not cancel, but can force the monetary contract with Eretz Yisrael. And the second raya was this raya that you may ask a guy to sign such a, it's called an oinoi, it's called an ownership notarization, let's call it that, for your piece of land. One more thing, another raya. The halacha is, in Hilchos Mezuzah, that if you buy or rent a house in Chutz La'aretz, you've got 30 days before you got to put mezuzahs in. Right? That's it. You sign a contract, you move in, call the sofer, excuse me, Reb Chaim, my sofer, I need mezuzahs in 30 days. Great, no problem. He orders them, he writes them, fine. Now, Yisrael doesn't work that way. You got to call before, because the moment you move in, you have a chiyuv on the spot. This is a Gemara in Menachos. If you rent a house in Eretz Yisrael, you do not have the 30 days grace. You have to, the mitzvah to put on mezuzahs immediately. Next three words are important. Mishum Yishuv, forward, Mishum Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Because you have a mitzvah, you're doing a mitzvah right away. So the chashivos of owning this land is special. Says Rashi. Yeah, the Rashi says because the moment you place mezuzah, you're showing that you want Eretz Yisrael to be settled. So we have three rayas, which the Rambam brings to say that the Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah. Now, up to now, questions? No, three rayas. Good. The Rambam doesn't talk about it. Let's talk about the Rambam a little bit. So one more time, the Rambam being a halacha sefer, being a author of a Sefer HaMitzvos, it's his job to count the 613 Torah, the mitzvos. Somebody says job. It's his job to quote the halachas. If you don't talk about one, that means you don't hold it to mitzvah. Why doesn't the Rambam mention this mitzvah? Is it because he doesn't hold it to mitzvah, or there's another perhaps reason? So I don't know who this is, but there's a sefer called Megillas Esther. It's not the Megillas Esther, but it's a sefer. It's a sefer on the Rambam. I don't know who wrote it.
Associated with the Ramban.
What?
I think it's associated with the Talmud of the Ramban.
A Talmud of the Ramban? Oh, that makes sense actually, because he's trying to say that the Rambam doesn't really argue. Okay, that makes sense. I don't know who it is. I don't have enough time. I have these Marmakomos without the actual sefer, so I don't know. Okay, so the author of the Megillas Esther, I don't know who it is trying to understand, is trying to explain why it is that the Rambam doesn't bring this mitzvah. And he says the following. He says, a little bit of a chiddush. Venerally, Kima shelo imona harav being the Rambam. That the reason why the Rambam did not count as mitzvah. Hu lefi shemitzvah Yerushas ha'aretz ve'yeshivasa, the mitzvah of conquering the land and settling the land. Lo nohaga rak b'mei Moshe v'Yeshua v'David. V'chol zman shelo yigolu ma'arsam. As long as the first geula, as long as the first golus, exile, did not yet kick in. Aval achar shegolu ma'al admosam. I'm assuming that's Nebuchadnezzar. Ein mitzvah zu nohagas l'doros. So the Megillah Esther is Pshat and Rambam, the complete other extreme. There's no mitzvah at all.
What do they do with the Gemara? So the Bavli came after that.
100%. 100% super. Just about everybody disagrees with the Megillah Esther. So you have to somehow explain somehow. One more time. The moment we had our first exile, in the time of Nebuchadnezzar, and we had to go to Babel, the mitzvah is gone. Ein mitzvah zu nohegas l'doros ad bo HaMashiach, until Mashiach comes. Masha Omar Ramban. What about the Ramban? He doesn't say the Ramban's rise from the Gemara. He just says, what about the Ramban? The Ramban goes on and on and on about all of the Tanoi, which and the not Tanoi so much. The Nevi'im, which talk about the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. Zehu davke bezman to Beis Hamikdash kayim. Aval achshav ein mitzvah lo gurubon. So Megillah Esther learns Pshat in the Rambam, the complete other extreme, which is it's okay. It's fine to have other opinions, even though it rubs you the wrong way. It's fine. Because the Megillah Esther says Pshat in the Rambam, there's no mitzvah to live here. The mitzvah only was Mimei Moshe, Yeshua, and David. Now that we got kicked out of Eretz Yisrael, we got to wait. You can live here. You can live in Tokyo too.
Pshat and Megillah Esther from where?
I'm sorry. The Megillah Esther is a book. It's not the Megillah Esther. It's somebody. That's a little confusing.
Sorry.
It's a man who wrote a sefer on the Rambam.
Okay.
And he named the sefer Megillah Esther. I don't know who it is. I don't know why he named the sefer.
I was just trying to figure out where Megillah Esther.
I'm glad you asked. And this author, this Megillah Esther author, he learns Pshat in the Rambam. But the reason why the Rambam does not bring this mitzvah is because there is no mitzvah.
It was only up to the
Little bit out,
destruction
I'm sorry.
It was only up till the destruction of the first temple.
I'm
not
assuming.
the
He just
second.
said until we exile. I'm assuming he means the first exile and not Titus, the Romans. I'm assuming he means the first one. That's my assumption. He doesn't say it.
So what does he do with Ezra?
It's fine.
If he wanted to go.
You want to go. By the way, in Ezra's time, many people didn't come.
I know.
There's a lot of problems with Megillah Esther. When you bring an important point. Ezra HaSofer made takanos and he cursed. And he took away Truma,
Right,
he took
he
away
wouldn't have
Weisz
said
from the
that.
Levium. Terrible. So the
There's
Megillah,
also Rabbi Huda.
What?
Rabbi Huda used to curse people who come over.
yeah, it's not part.
Not
The
a
Gemara.
Not a new argument.
But nobody brings this Gemara. I don't know why. In this shir I found is that besides these halachas about the woman and the mezuzah, the Gemara says, I believe it's the Gemara gets in, that if you live in Eretz Yisrael, you don't have a God. That was written after the Churban.
Rashi brings it on the Chumash.
Yeah, I don't know where is it? I don't. It's very. I think it's Gemara gets it. I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so. Nobody really, this opinion of the author of the Megillah Esther, be careful with that word here, is not that accepted. We have to find, therefore, also because of the Gemaras, which are Rambam, another solution in the Rambam. Agreed?
Yeah.
The Rambam is still a bit mysterious. Could it really be that there's no mitzvah at all? It could be. I mean, you could say whatever you want, he's the Rambam. But we'll have to figure it out. Okay, so, in addition, the problem gets more complicated, more to the point. The Rambam in Hilchas Mezuzah, and in Hilchas husband and wife, and in Hilchas writing a star on Shabbos, he brings the Gemaras. You're allowed to force your husband or your wife to come to Eretz Yisrael. You are allowed to write the star or ask a goy to write this document on Shabbos. You have to put on the Mezuzah. So he clearly held the Gemaras. Because remember, the Gemara is not a halacha book. The Gemara is a discussion. Like imagine lawyers talking about a law. It's not necessarily voted for. It's like when lawyers talk about a law, that's the Gemara. But the Rambam brings it la halacha. So that the Rambam brings it la halacha, again, we have to deal with this Rambam. So The most common answer given for the Rambam by various people is that there's a difference between a mitzvah and a hechsher mitzvah. A hechsher mitzvah is, I'm doing this because it's a means to an end. To explain it simply. For example, do you have a mitzvah to build a sukkah? No. It's not mitzvah to build a sukkah. It's mitzvah to eat a kazayis in a sukkah. Now, kamina would be, let's say you have a porch, which is already closed up and schach on top. Do you have a mitzvah to take the sukkah apart and rebuild it next year? The answer is no. You may want to because you want to protect the schach from the rain, but you don't have to. You understand? There's a difference. Is there a mitzvah to bake matzah? No. There's no mitzvah to bake matzah. It's a mitzvah to eat matzah. However, that being said, a mitzvah it might not be. But it's still a hechsher mitzvah. A hechsher mitzvah means, the way I'm going to try to translate with my English, a means to an end. And a means to an end does get a certain level of mitzvah. It does not merit, this is an important twist, it does not merit a number in the 613 mitzvahs. It does not get that label. But it does get a level of mitzvah. It's a hechsher mitzvah. Right? We know, okay, building the sukkah, not as much, but baking matzahs, people go crazy about it. According to Kabbalah, it's very important. So, hechsher mitzvah, there's something. There is an opinion, we do not hold like this, there is an opinion, that hechsher mitzvah is docha Shabbos. For example, bris milah is docha Shabbos, of course, we know that. What happens if the mohel's knife is not sharp? May you sharpen it? Halach is not. You're not allowed to sharpen it. Yes, you should have done it before. I'm sorry to say, the bris milah is cancelled. We will come back tomorrow morning for sure. That's why the mohel has to make sure it's before. There is an opinion, though, that before I go into the opinion, now the sharpening of the knife, is that a mitzvah? No. It's a hechsher mitzvah. That enables me, that's a good word to use, it enables me to do the mitzvah. That's hechsher mitzvah. Is it docha Shabbos? It's not. There is an opinion of Rabbi Eliezer in the Gemara that it is docha Shabbos. So even if we hold the halacha that it's not docha Shabbos, you may not sharpen the knife on Shabbos, the mole's knife, doesn't matter. It still shows that it has a level. So the Rambam says, the reason why the Rambam, I'm not going to count it as one of the 613 mitzvahs, or give it its own halacha mitzvah to have a Yisrael Eretz Yisrael, is because it's not an actual mitzvah. He doesn't write, you have to build a sukkah. He'll tell you, when you build a sukkah, it has to be 7 tefachim. But there's no actual mitzvah. That being said, it's still a hechsher mitzvah. So therefore, why is it a hechsher mitzvah? Because we all know there are some mitzvahs you cannot do in Chutz La'aretz. I had family for Pesach, and we went shopping, and I told them, this is because of Shviyas, have to be careful. They don't have it in Chutz La'aretz. It's very, very rare. We were very, very fortunate. We could do mitzvahs when people couldn't do. Chavetz Chaim, the Vilna Gaon, they were not able to do these mitzvahs. It's an incredible, that's a hechsher mitzvah. So come to Eretz Yisrael, in order for you to be able to do Truma and Maisas and Shemitah and Arwa, all these important things, which back in Switzerland you just can't do that. It's a technical thing. So come to Eretz Yisrael, because here you can do more mitzvahs. That's a hechsher mitzvah. It doesn't get its own 613, but it gets a hechsher mitzvah. That's why if a husband and a wife are married, and the wife or the husband says, I want to go to Eretz Yisrael, even though, there's a good way to understand the Rambam, even though he doesn't get its own number in the 613 list, the husband can say to his wife, or the wife can say to his husband, I want to be able to do more mitzvahs. I'm dragging you, it's a hechsher mitzvah. Also, you can also explain the thing of the mezuzah, or the writing of the God. Yeah, if people own land, if Jews own land in Israel, there will be possibilities of more mitzvahs. That's why we can understand the Rambam. So it's not a mitzvah to live here in its own, but it enables us to do many, many more mitzvahs. Right? You understand? Fine. Comes out that, I'm going to skip a little bit because it's getting a little bit late. One of the biggest opposers of the modern Aliyah is Rabbi Satmar. Rabbi Satmar, the earlier Satmar Rav, he wrote a book called Vayoel Moshe. He makes, before I'm going into more in Rabbi Yoel's hashkafa, if I want to allow myself, he makes a sikum, he makes a summary of the 4 shittos in Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. We started talking about it, but I'm going to go over a little bit and then we're going to discuss. He makes a sikum. So he brings up number 1, shittos Ramban, which we just learned. Nachmanides, sheyesh mitzvah, the Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, bizman hazeh min haTorah. Not a hechsher mitzvah. It's one of the 613 just to live here. Just to live here. Remember, on Sukkos, when you learn in a sukkah, do you do leishav a sukkah? No. You don't. When you sleep in a sukkah, you don't do leishav a sukkah. As far as I know, I don't think it's any, even though it's a mitzvah, because you have to do something here. The Ramban says Eretz Yisrael is higher than sukkah. Can you imagine that? Eretz Yisrael is a higher level than sukkah. Sukkah, you got to eat to be the kind of mitzvah of sukkah. Here, forget about Shabbos and Marishas. Just living here, you're doing a mitzvah. One of the easiest mitzvahs you can do, according to Ramban. That, the Satmar Rebbe brings the Ramban as a first shita. Second shita, he brings Rashi. I didn't explain so much in Rashi, but the people explained Rashi that is similar to the Sefer Megillas Esther in the Rambam, which, is a little bit extreme. There's no mitzvah in the Yishuv Eretz Yisrael at all, even when the Beit HaMikdash was here. It might be a hechsher mitzvah. It might enable you to do one mitzvah, but there's no mitzvah per se. So we have the Rambam, and we have the way people explain Rashi. Okay? Then he brings the Rashbash. We didn't go into that. The Rashbash, he brings more Kulim in the Rambam. And the Rashbash, I'll tell you who the Rashbash was. Yeah. No, I don't know. Sorry.
Shlomo ben Adir.
Sorry?
Shlomo ben Adir, the Talmud of the Rambam.
That's Rashba.
That's the Rashba.
I'm talking about the Rashbash. I don't know what the Rashbash is again.
Sorry.
Here. Rabbi Shlomo ben Shimon Duran. Beno shel HaTashbat. I don't know, that doesn't help me that much. B'Gedorle, he was from Algiers. He was a Rishon. Okay. So the Rashbash is Mefalpel in the Rambam, and he says that the Rambam would agree that with Man Beis HaMikdash there was a Yishuv Eretz Yisrael min haTorah, but the reason why he doesn't bring it is because of, I should explain this better. I'll go back in a moment, because only the Rabbah. So it comes out of the Rambam, there's 3 ways to understand the Rambam. Right? A little confusing, I apologize. I'm going to go around one more time. There's 3 ways to understand the Rambam. Either, like Rashi, there is no mitzvah at all, and there's a mitzvah, a hechsher mitzvah, it gives some kind of enables you, or says the Rashbash, that the mitzvah is nowadays only the Rabbanon, the Daraisa level is not here anymore. And then he brings the shita of Rabbeinu Chaim of a Tosfos and Ksuvos. We didn't go into that. That Enochanam in the time of Beit HaMikdash there was Daraisa. Nowadays there's nothing. Okay, so now though that we spent now half an hour, a little bit more about the halacha of living in Eretz Yisrael. Either we're doing a mitzvah right now, or we're not doing a mitzvah, or we're doing a mitzvah the Rabbana, and we're doing mitzvah Talmud Torah. Don't get me wrong, but or we're doing mitzvah that's Yisrael Eretz Yisrael, or we're not doing a mitzvah, or we're doing mitzvah the Rabbana, or we're doing a hechsher mitzvah. We're enabling us to do more mitzvahs here, right? If we go later and buy something which is Kedusha Shvius, enables us. Okay, those are the halach. Hashkafically, I'm going to push it a little bit. There's what's going on. There's a Gemara in Ksuvos, which is not so well known. I'm starting in the middle of a sugya, but trust me on this, it's fine. We need this pasuk for something else. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina. The Amar, Gimel Shavuos Halalu Lama. There's 3 oaths. There's 3 oaths which Hashem placed upon us. Shelo yalu Yisrael b'chom. That we should not force our way back. And one is Shelo yimordu b'umos ha'olam. and then we should not rebel against the nations. It doesn't mean you're not allowed to defend yourself. People have used this against the ghetto uprising. I think that's completely wrong. You're allowed to defend yourself. I mean, believe me, growing up in Europe, sometimes you have to defend yourself. Plus, it's fun. But you have to defend yourself. But you're not allowed to rebel. We're going to make a rebellion. We're going to make a crusade. Don't do that. And the third one is not Nagiyah. So there's 3 oaths, right? We like some 3 oaths.
Where's the Gemara?
The Gemara is in Ksubis 111a. Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. It's a large Amud, so it's towards the beginning. It's in the heart. It's towards the beginning. It's like the 8th line from the top. Sometimes we get dragged emotionally to the right or to the left. Even if you're on the right, or even if you're on the left, you can only properly argue with somebody if you understand the other person. We had a mashgiach in yeshiva. We used to walk up and down the Beth Medrash, just listen to how Chavrusos talk to each other, and you just stop. You didn't listen to him. Doesn't matter if he's right or wrong. You did not listen. You can only really properly argue, right? If we go past and people screaming about the Medina, let's first understand where is it coming from. You don't have to agree, by all means, right? But where does it come from? There is an oath. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us into exile, and there is an oath. The oath is: do not force your way back. Do not rebel against the nations. And the third oath is on the Umas Ha'olam. That's not okay. So says the Satmar Rebbe. The Satmar Rebbe sees this, and I'll read it to you.
Because the last one is not going to.
Is it? What is again? And then the third oath is on the guy that they shouldn't. I'll read it to you. Now you're right. You're right.
What is
The
this?
third oath, it is not because to defend. Yeah, you're right. 100%. Thank you. The third oath is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made an oath on the nations not to be too cruel, or not to enslave us too much.
So I was saying that for the Shoah, right?
You not only the Shoah. I mean, look around. I mean, it's,
Yeah, but the Shoah is
especially the Shoah.
Sure, if you had a question before.
So remind me later, then if I don't get back, remind me later, because this is a way some used. So let me read to you from the book of Yoel Misatmer. It's called Vayol Moshe. It's very sharp. I'm not apologizing, but be aware. This is very sharp. It's called Mamar Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. He first goes and speaks, but like we did now for half an hour, talks about the halacha. Is a mitzvah, not a mitzvah. Then he goes a little bit more in the hashkafa. But he goes like this: Ha'omrim shekol Yisrael Yisrael Eretz Yisrael b'zman hagolus. Those which say that all the Jews should come to Eretz Yisrael at the time of the golus, terem bias hamashiach, before Mashiach should come. If you are not sitting down, sit down. Zehu divrei minus la'apikarsus. Apikarsus and minus to say you're supposed to come back to Eretz Yisrael. Minus and apikarsus? Why? Because basically you're saying you don't believe that Hashem is going to bring us back on His own. One of the 39 Imamins is you have to believe B'vias HaMashiach. You're forcing it in a way. That means you don't believe in Mashiach is going to come. He was very strict about it. Then he brings something else. I'm skipping, obviously. The Mamar is pages and pages. There was the Agudas Yisrael had a 4th Knesset Gedola. Maybe you are more familiar with it. They said the following. She's kind of Eretz Yisrael. There was the Knesset Gedola of the Aguda was in Eretz Yisrael. Shom Kosov Lema V'nitzvach B'chol Michtav Ha'oitim, and it was written in all of the newspapers. Asher Knesset Gedola Pona LaYehudim. The Aguda is addressing all of the Jews. B'chol Tefutos Eretz Yisrael La'alos La'ar. Everybody should come. Not Netanyahu. Everybody come to Eretz Yisrael. V'tamani says the Stipler Rebbe. How can they write such a thing? Tapikosos. Sorry.
Stipler or the Satmar?
Stipler. No. The Satmar. I said Stipler? I apologize. The Satmar. Stipler wasn't that extreme.
Right.
He lives in Eretz Yisrael. He calls this Aguda Oynish HaMachzik is Oiber Aveiro. Very, very, very good. He does say though, that if you yourself want to come to Eretz Yisrael, like because you machmir the Ramban, by all means, learn. There's I have cousins who are Satmar, the sweetest guys in the world. Extreme, but the sweetest people in the world. They don't even live in Eretz Yisrael. I don't know where they have this from. Because I looked at the Rabbi, he said, if you yourself want to live here, you can live here. Could be they say because now that everything's political, you don't live here. I don't know. That's the Satmar Rebbe. And he says, though, if you want to be Makai and Mishra Eretz Yisrael, give money to those Yechidim which want to live here. So if somebody's in Chutz La'aretz and wants to be Machmer like the Satmar Rebbe not to live here, but he also wants to be Machmer like the Ramban and do Yisra Eretz Yisrael, give money. Or Meir Balanes, Kol Panavish. I don't know about Karen Kevin Israel, maybe not, but something like that. That's the hashkafic aspect of the Satmar Rebbe. It's based on the Gemara. It's not just ranting. It's based on the Gemara.
So it's based on the Gemara, if I understand this, it's based on the Gemara, the three O's, and we're basically violating two of those
Correct.
O's by coming.
Correct. Especially if it's political and it's with wars and with commotions with the UN and
But how does he justify the fact that the UN voted that the Dinas Yisrael should be coming?
I haven't seen this.
Now it's a world body.
I haven't seen this.
Well, we changed the
You must address it.
I haven't seen this, but I've heard that the Satmar see that as a Maisa Satan, the devil's work. What does that mean? Again, we can only properly argue if we have to understand what's going on. Now let me read to you. I'm sorry.
When did he write this?
What year?
The Satmar Rebbe.
I think in the 50s. I'm not sure. You could Google it. I don't know.
Can I
Google it. When did? Yeah.
Isn't there
Google
another
it,
Gemara
sorry.
that says if you stay
Sorry,
in
Google louder.
Hutzlaritz, if you stay in Hutzlaritz, as if you're an Avodah Zarah person, there's another Gemara completely opinion. Why is he just picking that one? There's two opposing opinions. There's another one that says if you stay in Hutzlaritz, as if you got
So
No,
foreign
Hashem.
gods.
I can't speak for him.
Yeah, the Gemara tells stories
But I
of the Tanoim that came here and they kissed the ground and
I can't speak for him, but I would assume that's an individual. You want him to live here, by all means. He didn't put down people which lived here. He felt very strongly about that Gemara. Why did that Gemara speak to him stronger than other Gemaras? I don't know. Look, let's face it. Even if like you feel drawn closer to other hashkafos, which is beautiful. He was a gadol. I mean, some people take his words and start throwing stuff. He would never do that. He was very, very, very strong. The Satmar organization in New York has been. I think I read it. Was voted by non-Jewish newspaper as the biggest chesed organization in the United States. It's crazy. They're the nicest people. This particular thing they take very extreme. That's okay. That's fine. We don't have to agree with them, but we have to understand where they're coming from. Fine.
it's an understanding. He said it's okay to live here, but you shouldn't live here. I'm confused.
If you yourself want to live here, I'll leave it to you.
No, explain it.
If you yourself want to live here, by all means.
So then one not.
But don't make it not a state, not an army, not a thing, not a that. You want to live here. That's why, if I may say, the Netuakar, what are they trying to do? They're trying to make Moshiach is not here. Let's give the state back to what's his face. And one of this guy, again, taking a little bit too far. He wants to be the minister of Jewish affairs within the Palestinian Authority. My time on him is even if you are right, you're an idiot because you can't trust the Palestinian Authority. That's besides the
What
point.
about all the pogroms that occurred before 1948?
Right. Okay.
The Grand Mufti and his buddy.
Right. So I'm just putting it out there. Okay. I want to read to you now a letter of Rav Kook. Right. We're going from Satmar Rebbe to Rav Kook. I should drink something between.
I just need
Milk
to
inflation a little bit.
So does it say it's a
And inflation of
mitzvah?
milk. Inflation is gvura and
Still, is it a mitzvah according to the Satmars to live here, or it's just a nice thing to do?
he doesn't pass it. He brings all of the shitos. He's the one who makes
You
the
want to live here,
Satmar.
go like a vote.
You want to live here? Go. That's why I said
Is it a
halacha.
good thing to do?
That's why I said this one. I said
Well, there
halacha
are
there's four
Satmars
opinions.
living
One thing.
here.
I said halacha there's four opinions. Hashkafically and politically, I'm talking for the next couple of minutes. Yeah.
So he's not against people. Jews could live here, but not to establish an
Correct.
organization and
Correct.
state.
I may add though, he does say that be aware that you are being, I think the word is scrutinized. What's the word?
Scrutinized.
Scrutinized in the eyes of God if you live here. Meaning be aware. You want to live in Bakasha, but you're in God's microscope if you live here.
Held to a
Therefore, he
higher
says not to
standard.
die. Now, on this point, I want to read the Rav Kook. What?
You're held to a higher standard.
Correct. So this is the letter of somebody wrote to Rav Kook. I'm reading Rav Yaakov David Ridvas. It's not the Ridvas because Ridvas is a Rishon. So it's somebody who had the same last name. Michtav Higani. Thank you so much for the letter. And that you have been upset with me, he says. Shena'asisi la'ez kinusi tzionist. Rav Kook is answering a letter. And that you're upset with me, that I've become, Nebuch in my old age, I've become a Zionist, Lahakriv as Nishmasi. Rav Kook was a poet. To sacrifice my soul. B'shvil Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Look how he answers. Ahuvi, my love. He answers back. He says, if all of the Zionists, if you call me a Zionist, and all of the Zionists will love Eretz Yisrael the way I love Eretz Yisrael, V'rotzim, I have to read even though it's a long letter, I have to read this. The words are unbelievable. V'rotzim v'yishuv Eretz HaKodesh v'zos HaKavona v'matara sh'ani v'skavan aleya b'shvil shi Eretz Hashem shebocha bo Hashem yizborach v'chive bo mikol ha'olam shkulon v'yesh b'skulos kedusha l'nevuah ruach HaKodesh halicha l'olam haba. I don't know what that means. V'afilu, now this comes the point. He says, Adarabba, the Rishonim should live here because that Yisrael protects Rishonim. He goes like this. Sharafilu shivcha knan ishav Eretz Yisrael muftachas yishibas alam haba. It's a Gemara in Ksubis. It's the Gemara. That a shivcha knan is, you know, what a level could you possibly be? She goes to alam haba just for living here. Va'afilu me'esav HaRasha. Esav HaRasha was not a good guy. Yaakov Avinu was scared to fight with him because what was Esav doing for 22 years while Yaakov was in Haran? He was in Eretz Yisrael. So Yaakov was scared. I have Torah mitzvos, and I have Emunah, and I have everything, but he got Eretz Yisrael. Says Rav Kook, and Yaakov Avinu was scared. And you telling me that I'm a Zionist? If that's what it means to be Zionist, okay, I'm not embarrassed. And he says, he agrees that not all Zionists believe what I believe. But he's saying, but if they all would believe this, like me, then it would be appropriate for every single Gadol Batar to be a Zionist. You don't have to be embarrassed to be Zionist. You don't have to be embarrassed. You can put the flags back up on your cards. Okay. I want to end off, because now we have two extremes. We have the Satmar Rebbe and we have Rav Kook. Everybody knows about Rav Kook. He's for sure that way. And everybody knows about the Satmar Rebbe for sure that way. Now the Tzitz Eliezer is a halacha sefer. He was a regular yeshiva guy. I'm going to read you what the Tzitz Eliezer writes. I was shocked.
I thought that the Mile of Esav was that he was keyboard out.
Yes, but I can tell you who it was. 1 second. It's a medrash. I didn't know that's what Rav Kook did. I didn't know this medrash. The medrash says that he had the mitzvah of Eretz Yisrael. I also always remember from school that it was killed out of it. Right? Okay. So the Tzitz Eliezer writes the following. We're over time, but I want to read this. It goes like this. He goes into the halacha why this Rambam not right. He brings it for there's various reasons why the Rambam doesn't quote it. We just went through a few. So the first couple of things. Then he goes like this. He says, what about now that we have a Medina? So according to the Satmar Rebbe, that makes it worse because now you're making an uprising. He says the opposite. We have a stronger mitzvah, not strong, the obligation is stronger. Ma'achar kum ha-medina, gamal kol yachav, you know it's a joke. That in Satmar, this is a joke by the way, this is what I'm about to say is a joke. Okay? That in Satmar, the Megillah reading takes a long time. Because besides banging by Haman, they bang by B'chol Medina Medina. That's a joke, okay? It's a joke. But he says that the Tzitz Eliezer writes that the Tzitz Eliezer, I believe, lived in Yerushalayim, and he writes that after we have the Medina, Gamal Kol Yachachod, there's two things. Unlike the Satmar Rebbe who says it's only a personal mitzvah, he writes Chiyuv Atzmi Prati. Yes, indeed, you yourself have to make a decision in life. Shall I leave my job? And there is a Chiyuv Atzmi Klali. V'zeh Biyoso mitzvah li'ochez ba'aretz, to grab onto it, k'dei l'chazik b'kach hamamad ha'klali shel chayvas ha'achiza v'etyashus shelo tachza v'tishka chalila b'zman azman. Never go back. It's after 1948. As much as you can, try. Sounds like Bennett's like Ani Nishba, right? You have to make sure not to get in there. He was not our Kuknik. No. Then he goes on and writes the following. I don't know exactly when he wrote this, but he has a nice quote. With that I'll end. Yesh loma, shelefi ha'matzav ha'achshavi, what we're currently holding, maybe 60s, 70s, I don't exactly know when he wrote this. Shehamedina nimtzas bo, which our country is in it. Shezeh ata yotza kemat mechituleho. It's out of its diapers. Did I not translate this correctly? I was shocked he said that. We're out of our diapers. We're becoming a real country. V'hu mukefes misaviv oyevim. Mushbayim. We have sworn enemies around us. Harotzim v'la'osa chalilu. Want to swallow us up. So unlike the Satmar Rebbe, who sees that as a reason why to give in, he says that the reason why to make the mitzvah even strong. Mutelas chova miyuchedes shel hichol tzuchushin. Be strong. Enlist. Right? L'maher la'alos arza v'lovo le'ezras Yisrael miyad tzadavar le'ev. Sh'no l'mechiyov shel mechavez mitzvah. Since it has a right, it's potentially a mechavez mitzvah. Knifsek b'Rambam. V'cholkach olam u'organ. And anybody who can organize something is their brother. Anyway, so we have 4 shittas in Yisrael Yisrael, even if it's not a mitzvah, and it's only a hechsher mitzvah. It's not a bad thing. Hechsher mitzvah is a thing to do. But according to the Ramban, the mitzvah to say the oraisa. Is it a individual mitzvah or is it on a klal mitzvah? There we're getting into the more shkafically sensitive things. I think what is very, very important to know is that I think in this community we are definitely more to one side, which is fine. But I think as a mature Jew, we have to see if people don't hold like what we say. Oh, they're crazy. It's based on something. Let's respect them. The same way we want them to respect us in our decisions. Respect them. We don't have to agree with them. And obviously, shouting and screaming and burning garbage, it's nonsense. But that's not the point. The point is that it comes from something. It's based on the Gemara. It's based on something. It's actually there. Where you yourself choose. B'akasha. Amen.
Excellent.